Hey everyone, Brandon here from B2R Investing and Financial Talk. I want to share something with you, and I thought I'd just share a little bit of conversation from my decades of experience in finance and real estate, and just share a few things on financial literacy today. And I've got some notes, and I want to make sure that I cover a lot of topic here today, lots of different things. And hopefully you'll enjoy this. Listen to the very end. I've got a final discussion when I go to the whiteboard and trying to explain things with budgeting and how to be able to save that much more. But one of the things I wanted to share is what I've seen even in businesses to personal finance, even into real estate investing, is a mismatch. And that is a mismatch with the revenues and the expenses. And what I'm talking about is a mismatch in timing. I have seen businesses when I was in commercial lending that were profitable businesses that went out of business because they had a mismatch in when their expenses were to when their revenues are. And the further apart causes increased stress. I would say that I've also seen that in personal finance. I've done some budget counseling for people, and they mismatch when that expense is to when they get paid or when the revenues come in. You want to do that same thing with real estate. And one of the ways I see that is people that buy properties with low or no cash flow in the purchase with the hopes that in the coming years, I even watched a video today of people talking about no cash flow and hoping for the timing of cash flow to come in the coming few years. And that's where the increased stress and opportunities for failure in anything with your personal finances, with your, maybe you've got a small business, with your real estate, is always making sure that your revenues are before your expenses. You should be thinking about every bit of your investing, making sure that the timing of when those expenses are, you have the revenues. And if they are significantly out of alignment, let's just use the example of the expenses of your property for that month. You want to make sure that your revenues come in the same month that the expenses are. The further those are away is the further when stresses happen. This example from that video was talking years away. They fortunately made it through, but that's where I see challenges of people losing their properties. This happened in our community recently. Somebody that had 12-unit investment property ended up losing all of them because they missed time when they thought the increased revenues were going to happen to the increased expenses, and they lost their properties. So always look, you want to have your revenues before your expenses, if at all possible, and never have them mistimed. The further they are, the increased stress. The same thing I look at with investors is, and with anybody getting good at something, is they lack the maniacal focus. And that's what I want to describe. It is a unusual, inordinate amount of focus, and I would call it almost maniacal focus. The people that have the extraordinary focus usually master whatever they're doing, and they become experts in it and usually make increased income from it. What I see with investors and even with new investors is they're always looking for what's the next best thing, and they're always looking over their shoulder, over others' shoulders of something new, something shiny, and they're never focusing on one thing and becoming a master at it. Stay focused on one thing. Usually it's one thing in real estate investing that you have maybe a little bit of background in or what you're passionate about, and not constantly dividing your focus, looking in different areas all the time, and you're, in a sense, jack of all trades and master of none. Stay focused, the power of one thing. The same thing I would want to talk about is what you make by the hour. One of the things I learned about a decade ago is finding out how much do you want to make. And I'll use an example. If you're wanting to make $100,000 a year, what that equates to roughly, and I'll just use the average of working, say, 2,000 hours, that's $50 an hour. If you're wanting to make $100,000, what is the activity that's worth $50 an hour? Are you doing the appropriate activities that can make you $50 an hour? When I was building out my small business, I was hyper-focused on that and was saying, here I want to make above $100,000. Am I doing, let's just say, $100 an hour work, or am I doing $10, $20, $25 an hour work? I would look and start working on activities that would make me increasingly $50, $100 and up hour work, and I would hire things that could make me increasingly more productive, would create leverage with time and people that were $10, $20, $30, $40 an hour work, so that I could backfill, and I would also make sure that I filled those hours with increasing hour work that was $50 to $100 an hour work. For me, it was on that sales side and also increasing the number of opportunities with leads. That was work that increased it from that $20 an hour work to $50 to $100 an hour work. I do the same thing even in real estate investing. Many of the people ask me why I don't be the GC. Is I'm missing out. If I'm down there doing the GC work, which is for me less productive, I'm not able to see finding the next deals, finding the next properties that I'm going to build. I make a higher dollar per hour in that activity versus being down in the weeds. Not that it's bad, but not doing the GC work, I can't have the time to find the next properties. So for that, what I'm paying to my GC, who has better skill set at it, has all the contractors for it, it's what he knows. I don't know it as well. I would be less efficient. I'm better at looking at where's the next properties I need to buy, getting those prepped with the banks, acquiring that land to build the next properties. I'm making a higher dollar per hour for that work. I'm always looking at what should I be doing. I know some of y'all know I have a property management business. Right now, I do a little bit of the sales side and the big picture side of growing the portfolio. I talk to some of the owners, and then I'm doing the initial sale and then handing it off. That's a higher productivity for my time versus some of the other duties that I have other employees. That's their better skill set, and I'm doing some of the higher level. So always be thinking, if I'm wanting to make more money, am I doing the appropriate activity per hour type of activity? If I'm wanting to make $100,000, am I doing $50 an hour work? If I'm wanting to make $200,000, am I doing $100 an hour work? So on and so forth. The next thing I would talk about is what we see in society, and we are a consumer-based society. What the world is teaching us is to be that employee that works for 45 years of our life to basically live on less when we finally retire. We're living in a consumer-based society. What they want us to do is live that middle-class lifestyle where we're making more money, we're paying our debts, which helps generate the economy, but then get more and more loans, thinking, can I make the payment? But what that does is living that high consumer society where I'm thinking not if I can pay for it, if I can afford it, but if I can just afford the payments, is I'm working the rest of my life for 45 years, and that's what the U.S. economy wants. The same thing by investing in a retirement plan, be it a 401k or an IRA, you can't save fast enough because there's very little leverage in that. And then you are the last one getting paid. Everybody else gets paid before you, be it the government, be it Wall Street, be it your stockbroker advisor. You are the last one that makes money. That allows you to be a worker through the economy for 45 years. There are multiple economies, and the ones that they promote the most through education is to be that W-2 employee. They are the highest taxed person in the economy. And maybe one more being self-employed because they're paying that matching. But in a sense, you are too, because your employer looks at what your total cost is. The next, it would be somebody that's an investor in stocks and bonds and other portfolio type of investing. They're paying the next lowest, which would be at 20%. Then there's the final piece, that full investor, in where the tax code tells us where they incentivize us. Look at the tax code not as a penalty system, but as an incentive system. They are showing you the path, but the world doesn't teach you that path. They want you to be that employer. The path is being an investor, and one of them that has the most incentives is real estate, because it provides a good for the economy which the government is not good at, and that's housing. You can, most times, with depreciation and all the incentives, pay little to no taxes. And that's what you should be looking at, getting into that realm and being that real estate investor. That's why I created this channel, to teach people. The final thing I want to talk about, and that is budgeting. And I'm going to move now to the whiteboard and explain some things on budgeting and how the world creates the economy that keeps you working for that 45 years, and what opportunities are out there with investing to lower those expenses and pay less taxes. Okay, here we go. Wanted to share one thing. You see me most of the time wearing a Hawaiian shirt. There is a reason for that. I do that to keep me mindful of my goals. They're almost there. Within the next few years, I'll be able to retire, and I want to live my life on the beach. And it's a symbol of retirement and financial freedom. My daughter just recently went to college this week. Saw a shirt there, DBU, which is Dallas Baptist University. It was a Tommy Bahama shirt. It was perfect, and I'm wearing that in honor of her. I'm creating this video in honor of that group, that Gen Z group. Dylan, Lucy, these videos are for you. I want you to be paying attention. These are the things I've been teaching this group, how to do better than us. I'm in the Gen X group. I want them to be ahead of us. I want that age group, but I want you to make the right decisions. Why I do this channel. So what I'm talking about is the consumer economy and what they live in, and it's a W-2 economy. They're working. You know, I know Dion talks about it, that 40-40-40 plan, but it's spot on. 40 hours plus a week of their lives for 40 to 45 years to live on 40% or less of their income when they finally retire. That economy is what the world promotes, is saving up into the 401k, saving into that IRA. Yes, there are some that can save and do very well, but the statistics say it's an extremely small portion. The people that have $1 million in a retirement account are 3% of the entire group that is saved in a retirement account. account has saved up $1 million. And if you follow only drawing 4%, the 4% rule, that only represents $40,000. So what I'm teaching is how to get there many years faster and not have to sell your portfolio to pay the bills. And that's through real estate investing. So the consumer economy, W-2 economy, you're starting with wages. The two highest expenses you'll have for your entire life are taxes and housing. What if you could reduce those significantly, take that savings that you're reducing it, and invest that? You can get way farther ahead that much faster. So taxes represents 25 to 35%. Who gets that first? It's the government. From your income, the government takes taxes out first. Then your expenses, and whatever those expenses are, you get to save whatever's left over. And this is the life of the middle class. Their home, what you can be approved for. They're going to approve you for the highest amount possible. Who gets the most benefit? The entire economy. You're spending more for housing. Then you're having all these other vendors that you need for your house. That represents roughly about 35% of your income. Then cars. What people are living on is about 25% of their income is going towards their car. And what I would say on that, that's not only the car payment, that's the gas, the maintenance, all of those things into having that car represents about 25%. Our family made a choice a few years ago. I was looking at the entire cost, and we got some inexpensive EVs, and it reduced all of our costs. There are EVs out there in that $30,000 to $35,000. I looked at gas alone. Gas was costing, for the four of us, I had two teenage girls and my wife and I had a truck that was getting 13 miles to the gallon. Felt like 13 gallons to the mile. With that expense, we were spending around $1,100 just in fuel alone. We looked at doing an all EV family about 5 years ago. That reduced our fuel costs from $1,100 down to around $250 a month. That reduced our cost. We keep our car, total cost of our budget, our vehicles represents 10% of our entire earnings per month. We kept it low. So cars, but what most people live on is that 25%. It's in that range. Then they've got credit cards, about 10% of their budget. All the others, the groceries, unfortunately they have lots of subscriptions to Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, you name all these different, Spotify, all these different subscription services, plus their groceries, plus all their utilities, all the other needs represents about 25 to 30%. And unfortunately, what this represents is about 95 to 100% of their entire income. This lifestyle, they can never get ahead. And as what they live, that middle class lifestyle, as they make more and more money, their lifestyle creeps up and gets higher and higher so that their expenses rise with them, and they never can get ahead. They live that consumer middle class lifestyle. Then the financially literate, and this is what I want you to become, is the tax code is not a penalty system. If you think about it, the tax code is an incentive system of where you want to live your life. Those that understand it live within that life, and that's through the investor life. And one of the biggest incentives there are is real estate. It is taxed at investor income, which is typically 0%. Here's why. So yes, they will have some W-2 income, but they'll end up living the wealthy lifestyle that have at least 5 streams of income. And majority of that is in the investor area, in the investor economy. And very little of it is in the W-2 economy, because the W-2 economy is the highest taxed. So in the investment economy, the income comes in first, minus the expenses to that investment, minus whatever the depreciation allowance. And in real estate, there's lots of depreciation opportunities. And then they tax on whatever's left over, minus all of these expenses, which depreciation is a non-cash expense. So you can pay typically 0% on all of this income with all these expenses, leaves the cash flow. What you might consider, and this is for especially this younger group, but maybe you have the opportunity to house hack. I know Dion has done it with his kids and house hacked many properties and built a portfolio and a lifestyle of financial freedom through house hacking. These are the things that I teach to that group. My wife and I did it too. Our first house was a duplex. We lived in one side and rented out the other. That created the expense for our housing, which is the top 2 largest expenses, is housing and taxes. It made it a much smaller expense. So if you house hack, be it a duplex or a fourplex, typically you can create your housing expense, and I'm just going to use some examples. Sometimes that it creates a housing expense doing that at 0, but I'm going to say that housing expense is down to 10%, and living that non-consumer lifestyle, you're going to live in buying a car, be it a cash car or a vehicle where you create your car expense down to 10%, no credit cards. I still say you're going to have about 30%, but look what happens. Now, because you've house hacked, you've created your entire housing expense at 10%. And that may be because, let's just use an example, you're single, you're in a duplex that has 3 bedrooms on each side, you're renting out one side, the 3-bedroom, maybe you're renting out a couple of bedrooms to some friends, your expense is down to 10%, your total budget, now you're still living very similarly, but your budget is at 50%. Now your income, you're able to save, look at this, you're able to save 50% of your income to investing. So then you could go to your next investment property, be it you live in it, house hack one more time, you're getting ahead and you're on your way. If you acquired 4 investment properties in 10 years' time, if those had aged 10 years on those 4 properties, I promise you there is a super high likelihood you'll be into financial freedom and be a millionaire. It's living this financial literate economy that the world doesn't teach. You can do this. You Gen Zers, you could be there in your late 20s to early 30s. And if you're older, I went into this lifestyle at 48 and began being diligent. I lived beneath our means. We were living in a budget of 60% of our total earnings, and we were investing 40%. And in the last 5 years, we've acquired 14 investment properties. We've got land to build several more, and we're generating that income and have become financially free. We're making the choice right now when we're going to retire. We can retire today. I think we're going to work a few more years just to completely solidify it. Our kids are graduating and heading to college, so we have a little bit of expenses there. But we're able to retire today because we began living that financial literate economy within the last 10 years and extremely focused on it in the last 5. Hopefully this helps you understand which economy and what happens living those two different economies. This gets you financially free in about 10 years. This probably never gets you financially free, but you have to work 40 to 45 years living this economy. Living and nailing financial freedom here in B2R Investing, one build at a time.